The year 1974 was a turning point for the United States Mint. The nation was facing economic turbulence, and inflation was rapidly rising. Copper prices, in particular, had surged dramatically, raising serious concerns about the cost of producing the Lincoln cent. For decades, the penny had been composed primarily of copper, a metal that was now becoming too expensive for mass minting. In response, the mint began to experiment with alternative materials, seeking a viable solution that could reduce production costs while preserving the coin's familiar look and feel. What followed was a series of quiet trials, limited tests, and behind-the-scenes experimentation, one of which would unknowingly give birth to one of the most mystifying error coins ever associated with the Lincoln series. To the average American in 1974, the penny seemed unchanged. The obverse still bore Abraham Lincoln's profile, and the reverse proudly displayed the Lincoln Memorial. But deep within the operations of the Philadelphia and Denver mints, officials were conducting trials using aluminum planchets in place of copper. Congress had even been presented with examples of these experimental pieces. But due to pushback from the vending machine industry and concerns from the public, the proposal was abandoned. The aluminum cents were ordered to be destroyed. Most were believed to have been melted down or recalled before they could be distributed. But history, as always, had its own plan. For years, rumors swirled about the existence of 1974 aluminum pennies that had escaped destruction. A few surfaced in private hands, but the legality of owning them was contested. The real twist, however, lay not in the experimental coins themselves, but in a different, far subtler error that went undetected for decades. It didn't come from aluminum or legislative oversight. It came from something more mundane, something easier to overlook, the striking process itself. In 1999, a collector by the name of Thomas Greer attended an estate sale in rural Ohio. Thomas wasn't a seasoned numismatist. He had taken up coin collecting as a hobby after retiring from a long career as a machinist. His interest lay in the mechanics of the minting process, how coins were made, what could go wrong, and what those errors might look like. At the sale, he purchased several coin albums, many of which were filled with average wheat cents and memorial pennies. But in one small, unlabeled envelope tucked inside a folder, he found a group of 1970s-era coins, including a worn but curious-looking 1974 Lincoln cent. At first glance, it didn't look unusual. But Thomas noticed the texture felt slightly off, smoother, almost too clean in some places and too rough in others. Under his magnifier, he saw that the word "liberty" was oddly faint. The B and E seemed misshapen, as if the die had skipped or failed to press deeply. Even more telling was the date. The 4 in 1974 appeared doubled, subtly but undeniably. The tail of the numeral almost shadowed itself, like an echo frozen in metal. The obverse showed light ghosting around Lincoln's jawline, while the reverse, although less dramatic, presented a slight distortion in the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. He knew this wasn't the typical wear and tear. There was something in the strike itself that seemed inconsistent. He added the coin to his growing box of oddities and began researching. In online coin forums and numismatic books, he found references to 1974 double-die obverse varieties, but most were minor and easily dismissed. His coin didn't match any of the catalogued errors. It wasn't until a retired mint employee reached out privately through a message board that Thomas began to understand the potential significance of his find. The man, who had worked briefly in die production during the early 1970s, recalled a batch of dies used at the Philadelphia Mint that had undergone partial rehubbing. Occasionally, the second impression would not align perfectly with the first, leading to mild but detectable doubling. These dies were supposed to be scrapped. But with high demand and limited resources, a few of them made their way into circulation, unintentionally creating double-die coins that were never officially documented. Thomas submitted his coin to a grading service. After weeks of anticipation, the results confirmed what he suspected. The coin was graded MS63 red-brown, with designation for a Class II double-die obverse. The doubling was not dramatic but highly unusual for its era. The graders noted that the error extended beyond the date to parts of "In God We Trust" and "Liberty," something not previously identified on 1974 cents. A mint anomaly that had remained hidden for decades had finally surfaced. As news spread of the coin's verification, collectors began examining their 1974 pennies with renewed interest. While millions had been produced that year, the specific characteristics of Thomas's coin made it a standout. The slight misalignment of the rehubbed die, the odd texture of the strike, and the subtle ghosting around Lincoln's profile all pointed to a very narrow window of production. It was likely that only a small number of these coins had been struck before the faulty die was replaced. The market responded with increasing enthusiasm. At first, Thomas received modest offers, $20,000 here, $40,500 there. But as specialists began writing about the variety, interest soared. A well-known error coin dealer offered $15,000 sight unseen, followed by another who proposed a trade involving a high-grade 1931 cent in cash. Thomas refused. The coin was no longer just a piece of metal, it was part of a story, a discovery that challenged the assumption that modern coins held no secrets. In 2008, another collector from Arizona reported a similar coin, sharing key traits with Thomas's example. It reignited discussion, and when the second coin was authenticated, it helped confirm the existence of an unofficially recognized die variety. It was the beginning of what some numismatists began calling the ghost rehub error, a quiet mistake born not of experimental materials or mint policy, but of human oversight and routine production demands. As time passed, only a handful of other examples emerged. The scarcity, coupled with their unique error pattern, drove demand even higher. Auction houses began featuring them as highlight lots in specialized sales. Coin publications ran features detailing the mystery behind the rehubbed die, and how such an error could go unnoticed for decades. It wasn't just a collector's curiosity, it had become a piece of American minting lore. By 2020, the market value of Thomas's coin had risen steeply. Valuations varied, but experts agreed that high-grade specimens with clear doubling could command between $65,000 and $135,000, depending on their condition and provenance. For Thomas, the financial gain was secondary. What mattered most was the journey, the quiet thrill of finding something lost to time, overlooked in an ordinary envelope at an unremarkable estate sale. Today, the 1974 1-cent penny error remains one of the most intriguing unsanctioned varieties of the Lincoln series. With its roots in an era of economic strain, its discovery tied to a forgotten die process, and its value propelled by scarcity and mystery, it serves as a reminder that history often hides in plain sight. In a coin so common, so familiar, the rarest detail can whisper a different story, and for those who listen, it can turn pocket change into a lasting legend. In 2014, the United States Mint was deep into its modern production era, a time when technology had all but perfected the art of coinage. Billions of coins flowed through the presses with efficiency, guided by digital precision and human oversight. The Lincoln cent remained a staple of this system, reliable, consistent, and familiar to everyone from schoolchildren to seasoned collectors. On the surface, the 2014 Lincoln penny didn't seem to carry the intrigue of its earlier ancestors. It bore the Union shield on the reverse, a design first introduced in 2010 to symbolize national unity. The obverse still featured Abraham Lincoln's resolute profile, unchanged since 1909. Everything about the 2014 penny seemed predictably modern, until one mistake, nearly invisible at a glance, turned one of the most common coins in the country into a rare and highly sought-after anomaly. Unlike older error coins born from the chaos of mechanical processes, the 2014 mistake was the product of a quiet misalignment, a flaw that only revealed itself under close examination. There was no obvious doubling. No missing mint mark. No broad strike or misfeed. But hidden within that sea of sameness was a small batch of coins that bore an unintentional and stunning inconsistency, one that would eventually become known as the 2014 double die obverse error. It wasn't immediately recognized when these coins entered circulation. With over 8 billion pennies struck in 2014 across all mint locations, nobody suspected anything unusual had occurred. Not until late 2015, when a schoolteacher and hobbyist coin collector named Rachel Morrison, based in Kansas City, happened to inspect a handful of change she received from a bookstore. Rachel had taken up coin collecting not out of professional interest, but as a quiet hobby after long days at school. She loved the possibility of finding history in her pocket, of spotting what others might miss. She placed the pennies on her desk and, out of habit, held one under her magnifier. It was a 2014 D cent, bright and well-struck. But something about the word "Liberty" caught her attention. The letters looked slightly thicker than usual, with subtle shadowing that seemed unnatural. At first, she assumed it was glare. But as she adjusted the angle of the light, she saw it clearly: the letters were doubled. Not just a trick of reflection or post-mint damage. The doubling was embedded in the metal. She moved to the motto, "In God We Trust." The same distortion. Clear, raised lines next to the original impressions. Her hands began to tremble slightly as she checked Lincoln's eye and jaw. Even his profile had faint signs of duplication, like an image echoing itself. Rachel set the coin aside, unsure of its significance but unable to ignore the feeling that she'd found something important. She posted photos on a coin collectors forum, asking for opinions. Within hours, experienced collectors began weighing in. Some thought it might be machine doubling. Others suspected a real doubled die. One expert requested high-resolution scans. And when those were shared, the verdict began to form: this wasn't damage. This wasn't glare. This was a legitimate, unlisted double die variety. Excitement rippled through the community. A modern double die hadn't been confirmed for the 2014 cent until now. And Rachel's find appeared to be a strong one. She submitted the coin for certification. After weeks of anticipation, it returned graded MS66 red with a newly recognized designation, 2014 D double die obverse. The grading company's notes highlighted strong doubling in "Liberty" and the motto, along with minor evidence on Lincoln's ear and jaw. It was official. As word spread, collectors began pouring through rolls of 2014 pennies, hunting for additional examples. Some were found, though not many. Only a limited number of these coins had been struck before the faulty die was removed or reprocessed. The error appeared isolated to a very specific die pair used briefly at the Denver Mint. The result was a scarcity that rivaled some of the rarest modern errors, especially in higher grades with a brilliant red luster. Rachel's discovery sparked a new wave of interest in Lincoln Shield cents, a series that until then had received little attention from error collectors. Most believed modern quality control would prevent such flaws. But here was evidence to the contrary, a sharp reminder that even in a world of digital precision, human oversight and physical wear could still create collectible chaos. Auction houses quickly took interest. Rachel's coin was not sold immediately. She chose to hold on to it, more fascinated by its journey than its price. But others who found similar examples did bring them to market. In early auctions, prices hovered around $6,000 for red examples in MS64 and MS65. But as awareness of the variety grew and the number of confirmed examples remained low, demand pushed those prices upward. By 2019, a certified MS66 red 2014 D double die obverse fetched $27,000 at a Midwest auction. Just 1 year later, another example topped $43,000, purchased by a prominent Lincoln cent specialist looking to complete a comprehensive error set. Interestingly, some of the certified coins showed slight differences in the degree of doubling. Experts began categorizing them by die state and strike clarity, which only added to the depth of the variety. The earliest strikes, those with the clearest doubling, became especially prized, and premiums climbed accordingly. The most valuable known specimen to date was sold quietly in a private transaction in early 2023. Graded MS67 red and showing full cartwheel luster with textbook doubling on all major elements, it changed hands for a staggering $89,000. The buyer, a well-known East Coast collector, added it to a display of post-2010 Lincoln cent rarities that had begun to attract serious academic attention. Meanwhile, the Mint offered no official comment on the error. Internal documents suggested that a small number of dies had been overused, and a faint misalignment during the hubbing process may have gone unnoticed until the die was already in production. No recall was issued. No public acknowledgement was made. The error simply entered the world, unnoticed, waiting to be found. collectors today view the 2014 D double-die obverse penny as one of the most intriguing errors of the Shield cent era. It proved that even modern coins, minted by machines with near-perfect calibration, were not immune to the unexpected. And more importantly, it reminded collectors that great discoveries often hide in the smallest, most ordinary corners of life. The value of the 2014 penny error has continued to rise steadily. With confirmed examples still limited and public interest growing, the current estimated value range for certified, mint state red specimens lies between $35,000 and $90,000. For a coin still younger than many smartphones, that's a remarkable trajectory, and for those who search, a sign that history is still being written, 1 cent at a time. The year was 1998, and the United States Mint was operating at full tilt. With billions of coins pouring out of facilities in Philadelphia and Denver, the Lincoln cent continued to be a cornerstone of American coinage. It had long since become one of the most familiar pieces of currency in circulation, passed between hands in corner stores, tossed into change jars, and tucked into vending machines without a second thought. The obverse still bore Abraham Lincoln's enduring profile, and the reverse displayed the Lincoln Memorial, a design first introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of his birth. By all accounts, the 1998 penny should have been just another product of modern minting efficiency, flawless, predictable, unremarkable. But somewhere deep within that year's production run, an unnoticed mistake emerged, destined to one day alter how collectors viewed even the most recent chapters of numismatic history. Few people at the time were searching 1998 pennies with particular interest. While there had been whispers of minor die issues in the late 1990s, none had attracted the attention of major grading agencies or auction houses. That is, until the whispers turned into rumors and the rumors into something concrete, a tiny visual detail that signaled the existence of a subtle but powerful error, one that had slipped past the watchful eyes of quality control and into the hands of the public. It wasn't until 2007 that this mystery began to take shape. A quiet coin collector named Lionel Davis was sorting through his collection in his Arizona home. He'd always preferred Lincoln cents. There was something about their design and ubiquity that drew him in. Lionel wasn't a wealthy collector, he didn't have display cases or rare gold pieces. What he had was a worn wooden desk, a high-powered loupe, and a habit of examining every penny that passed through his hands. That's when he spotted it. A 1998 penny, at first glance, looked unremarkable. The surfaces were sharp, the fields free of scratches, and the copper still carried its red shine. But when he tilted it under the light, something about the reverse caught his attention. Specifically, the letters A and M in America seemed too close. They nearly touched. In most Lincoln Memorial cents, the spacing between these letters was clear and defined. But here, the gap had all but vanished. Lionel blinked and looked again. It wasn't damage. It wasn't wear. It was in the die. It had been minted that way. Puzzled, he pulled out other 1998 pennies for comparison. One after another, he confirmed the same thing, all had the normal, widely spaced A and M. This one was different. And the difference wasn't cosmetic, it was structural. He had stumbled across a 1998 wide AM variety, a transitional error few even knew to look for at the time. The origins of this mistake lay in a shift between proof and circulation die styles. For proof coins minted in San Francisco, the reverse dies had a design where the A and M were closer together, known as the wide AM. Circulation coins, by contrast, were supposed to use a reverse die where those letters were spaced further apart, the close AM. Somewhere during production in Philadelphia, a proof reverse die was mistakenly used to strike a batch of circulation coins. The mistake was quiet and invisible at the scale of production. But to the trained eye, it was a glaring error, an unintentional crossover between formats. Lionel posted photos to an online coin forum, and initial responses were skeptical. Some thought it might be a trick of the light. Others speculated that the coin was altered. But when a well-known numismatist confirmed that Lionel's discovery matched known characteristics of proof reverse dies, such as the distinct spacing between the A and M, and the placement of the initials, FG, on the right side of the Lincoln Memorial, the conversation changed. Lionel submitted the coin for professional grading. Weeks passed. When the package returned, he opened it with trembling fingers. The verdict, MS-66 read. Designated as a 1998 wide AM transitional error. Authentic. Verified. Rare. Word spread quickly, and suddenly, everyone was hunting through 1998 pennies. Coin roll hunters and collectors nationwide began examining reverse dies with a level of scrutiny not seen in years. A few other examples surfaced, but the number remained extremely low. Only a small fraction of 1998 circulation pennies had been struck with the proof reverse die, making Lionel's find more than a curiosity. It was a treasure. Auction houses began featuring the error coin in their high-profile sales. The first publicized 1998 wide AM penny sold at auction for just under $6,000. Within a year, another sold for over $12,000. As the market realized just how limited the supply was, prices climbed steadily. Coins in mint state condition with a brilliant red surface began commanding figures many would never have associated with a modern penny. By 2012, the error had established itself as one of the premier modern Lincoln cent rarities. Collectors knew to look for wide AM reverses not only in 1998, but also in 1999 and 2000, due to similar die confusion. But the 1998 version remained the most iconic. It was the first. It was the key to unlocking the mystery. Interestingly, the U.S. Mint never publicly commented on the specifics of how the proof dies ended up in circulation use. Whether it was a case of hurried production, a mix-up in die inventory, or something more complicated, the truth remained shrouded in silence. And perhaps that's what gave the coin its mystique. It wasn't just a technical mistake, it was a glimpse into the fallibility of a massive system, proof that even in a world of precision, human error could create lasting legends. Collectors today continue to hunt for the 1998 wide AM penny. Many have come up empty. Those who find one know immediately what they're holding. It's not flashy. It doesn't scream wealth. But it whispers history, and to those who understand its value, it speaks volumes. Over the years, the price for high-grade examples has surged. In 2017, an MS-67 red sold for just over $46,000. By 2023, the best-preserved specimens had auction houses quoting figures as high as $100,000. The record sale to date involved a pristine MS-67 Plus red example that went under the hammer for $118,500 to a private buyer in New York. With continued demand and the difficulty of locating new examples in the wild, the value of the 1998 wide AM penny is expected to rise even further. Today, the confirmed price range for this rare error coin sits between $48,000 and $120,000, depending on its condition, color designation, and provenance. But beyond its monetary worth, the coin represents something deeper, a reminder that no era of coinage is immune to mistakes, and that even in the most unassuming pocket change, history can leave behind a signature meant for only the most observant eyes.